Good morning. Today is Tuesday, November. What is today? Hey, this is 14. Today is Tuesday, November 21st. It's a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioners Soboroff, Figueroa Villa, and Goldsmith are present.
Mr. President, if I may make a quick correction to the agenda. Item 5B as in boy, it should read public employee discipline / dismissal / release / public employee performance evaluation. Performance evaluation should be removed. It is relative to the Inspector General position and not the appointment of an Inspector General.
I see. Okay. So delete the words performance evaluation.
And also the possible board action relative to appointment of an acting interim Inspector General.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and time for us to think about each other and our families. Item number 1, items A through S, we're going to hold till after the closed session meeting today. We have a long closed session meeting, but I want to hold these until after that. So we'll go right now to item number 2A.
Okay.
Do we have any comments on
Item number 2A, we do have one public comment card.
Okay.
Executive Director's Report dated November 15, 2017, relative to the official police garage towing and storage rates for 2018, posting completed. We have Mr. Herman.
2A.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, constituents and stakeholders of Angelenos. Is the mic on, sir? Because it doesn't sound very good. Oh, there you go. Thank you. You know about garage towing. We all do. But the problem with stopping all this garage towing has to do with having a California license, a valid license, in addition to your up-to-date insurance.
Mr. President, the speaker's off topic. This is about the posting of the rates of the tows.
Sir, let me reframe.
Off topic.
Let me reframe.
Last
to
warning
the point.
on this one. Go ahead.
Fucking executive, fucking directors, fucked up report for the fuck date of November fucked up 15, 2017. Am I on topic? Thank you. Fucked up relative to the fucked up official police, fucked up garage, fucked up police garage, fucked up towing garage, fucked up police garage towing, and
you're out of
fucked
policy.
up storage rates for
Stop.
2018.
Hold. God, we'll stop the clock. I've checked with the city attorney. By reading something and just putting the word fuck in between every word is off topic, and so your time is up on this. We'll go to the next one.
Okay, we have no other
4
comment
seconds
cards.
for the record.
We have a motion for approval. All in favor? Okay.
Thank you. We're now on item number 2B, Department's Report dated November 15, 2017, relative to the Department's response to the Office of the Inspector General's Youth Program recommendations.
Has everyone read any questions or comments? That was a very well done report. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Any questions? Do you guys want to hear a presentation? Are we good to go?
I don't need to hear a presentation, but I did have a couple quick questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the great report and all just the incredible work since this went down. And I just wanted to understand a little bit better the developing a more robust recruitment and selection process for the YSO positions is still in progress. You talked about in the IG section, you talked about some of the criteria: tenure, maturity, work history, administrative skills, oral and written communication skills, flexibility, commitment. But at this time, no additional selection criteria has been developed. So if you could just kind of share the thinking behind that, if there is additional work that you're planning to do, because it's noted as in progress.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and echo happy holidays to all of you.
Thank you.
This came from recommendation number 2, developing a more robust recruitment and selection process. So what we have looked at the manual section that spelled out maturity, tenure as actually a pretty decent starting point, and then we have also requested in the budget to make those positions police officer 3 positions, which would require an oral interview process that we can tailor specific questions to, specific to that. But that's where we've gone with this so far.
Excuse me, sir, can
what's
you
meant by in
identify
progress?
yourself for the record, please?
I'm sorry?
Can you identify yourself for the record?
Sorry. Yeah, Commander Jeff Burt, the commanding officer of Community Policing and Policy Group.
So it's in progress. So what would be the next steps, or?
Right now, next step is continuing a working group with the Office of Operations, who are essentially where all YSOs, youth service officers, work to discuss specific questions for an interview process, whether they're P2s or P3s, that we can provide to the commanding officers at each division. So when they do have an interview process for this spot, they can ask specific questions related to maturity, related to understanding of youth, the youth brain, and actually specific youth programs.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So.
Can I ask the Inspector General, in terms of your analysis, whether you think there's additional specificity required, or whether this is sufficient?
Good morning. I'm Assistant Inspector General Kevin Rogan. I worked with the department on this issue. We have not come up with what the guidelines should be. Generally, we look to the department to identify those guidelines, and then we'll evaluate them. I agree that one specific item we were looking for was a documented evaluation process. So when Commander Burt talks about the department moving toward a questionnaire that specifically identifies the same questions asked to each candidate, and then a documented response of how the evaluator sees the candidate as fulfilling the job, that would satisfy what we're looking for in terms of being able to review documentation, because the guidelines that exist in the policy can be broadly interpreted. So we are certainly looking for the youth unit to identify more specifically what they want the evaluators to look for.
Is that part of the plan, or?
That is part of it. We are part of that process with the Office of Operations.
Okay, great. And another question about the span of control, similarly in progress. I understand that you saw the comparative chart. There's lots of factors that enter into this, and you wouldn't want to have just kind of a single ratio for every circumstance, but just wondered if there was, given that it's still in progress, if there's going to be an effort to further refine that, or some kind of guidelines or criteria that you might use to make those decisions in different circumstances.
So the reason we put it in progress, although I'm comfortable with the span of control now, is that I see looming, we have another cadet class coming up in January. So Detective Bland, who runs the youth programs unit, I asked him to look around and see if there are best practices out there when it comes to defining span of control. And some people, as you noted, we gave an example from actually the Girl Scouts of the Girl Scouts of America, and they have a program that actually breaks things down, span of control, by age as well. And I thought, so that's a progress thing, because we have PAL programs, we have junior cadets, and we're dealing with younger ages of kids. Both Detective Bland and I think that may be something to look at and examine when we develop span of controls. We don't just say maturity and the type of event, et cetera, but we actually look at age requirements and recommend that for the department.
All right. Do you have any other perspective on that?
Again, that's moving in the direction that we would look for. The manual, in some areas, gave pretty broad discretion on the type of events and what the numbers of span of control could be. So we're hoping that the department will refine those down more specifically. And we certainly concur with the idea that the junior police would probably take different ratios than the cadets at large will. So we're looking forward for that more refinement, more specificity, and that in cases where a cadet or a youth post advisor believes they can have flex for that they would request that. And I believe that's in the manual, that there is still room for spans of control that are not the norm, as long as the supervisor approves that.
Okay, great, thank you. I also just want to applaud in particular the work around the training program. Really great to see that, see you stand that up so quickly and address such important topics.
Thank you very much.
Anything else any of you would like to say about program or progress?
Just briefly,
Yes, sir.
we're committed to obviously improving all youth programs. The cadets is our biggest, our signature one. We have other ones. As such, we've completed an in-depth review of our PAL program, similar to our cadet assessment. We just added to the youth programs unit Sophia Liu. She's a police performance auditor 3 to conduct the department-wide inspections of topical oversight issues based on the recommendations from the IG's report and based on our own observations. So we are really tightening up our audit process. Starting December 1st, we have a list of audits that are going out and that we'll be leading. Mike redeveloped all the cadet promotional exams. So when cadets go to become a sergeant or to a captain or a commander, to include questions encouraging ethical decision-making. We just had our promotional exam this Saturday, including an essay question that requires cadets to identify their actions and responsibilities when they see possible acts of wrongdoing. Good. So everybody trying to take that test had to write that. And we partnered with the Museum of Tolerance for next year for a Cadet Academy Learning Day to strengthen our message of inclusivity, understanding, and respect for the uniqueness of all people. Finally, we are in partnership with a regional community college in establishing an online course for all cadets and completely free to those kids who are in high school, so kids can get college credits for administration of justice. So we're pushing forward as hard as we can with a whole wide to make our program better.
Great. Do we have any
if I could add also, Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
When we met with the department on this, I expressed our appreciation for how much work they had completed in a short period of time, particularly on the training issues. It was really more than I expected them to get done. They had a well-developed plan for the training aspect, and that to us is a very critical part.
Yeah.
So I appreciate their progress.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead. Do we have any comments on this?
We have 2 comment cards. We have Mr. Herman and Tiffany Guerra.
I can do it. You do that? Yeah.
Well, in voice for the public's interests, as most of us have agreed with, that we're not in favor of the Inspector General's report regarding a youth recommendation. We've been opposed to this criteria of cadet program because of the issues of, see, I can't say the word fucked because that's what happened. Children were being fucked. And that's how pathetic this has become. A systematic program where children are involved and police officers get away with it. A 10-year veteran taking a child broadly out into the public to his home and engaging in sexual misconduct. Sexual misconduct. Isn't that a word we hear today? Loosely and vaguely. So my concern is whether or not PAL or junior ethics is important to any one of you, I find very lightly in doubt. Why? Because in Sacramento, we heard of senators in programs with children. How were they involved? Fucking 14-year-old girls in Sacramento. And then today's current event regarding cadet programs, you've heard the outcry of the public. They are in opposition. They oppose as much as I do. I can't believe grown men sleeping with children in programs for what? An office operation of cadets? Is that what you call it, Mr. Django? Is that what they call in your country? Sleeping with young children? Any of you believe that? I can't believe that today. So I'm fucking crazy trying to make an understanding why in Sacramento and in Los Angeles and in the Los Angeles Police Department, we've been fucking young children in programs called cadet programs.
Thank you. Tiffany Guerra.
So the department's response to the Inspector General's youth program recommendations is insufficient, as we knew it would be. The report talks about Robert Kane and the theft of equipment as the incident that exposed deficiencies in the system. But why were they not already aware of deficiencies in the system? They didn't have any standardized programs. They didn't have any standardized training for supervisors. They didn't even have enough people to supervise cadets. Yet the chief of police calls the cadet program overwhelmingly successful. But there's no measure of what happens once cadets leave the program, and no evidence of how cadets themselves even benefit so overwhelmingly successful to whom. There is evidence, however, of cadets who have been harmed by the program. Going back to this report, when we look at prominent external organizations that specialize in youth development and programming that the department reached out to for this report, it's unclear how those organizations were selected. The Boy Scouts was one of the organizations that received questionnaires asking for feedback, but the Boy Scouts are renowned for covering up sexual assaults committed by Scout leaders, and they contributed to the LAPD minimizing what happened to LAPD explorers, 27 of whom were assaulted in this program's history. Another organization that was reached out to by this report was the Los Angeles Sheriff, asking for feedback about how they do their program. But the Los Angeles Sheriff's employees are constantly being reported for sexually assaulting women and children while off and on duty and inside jails. So where was the outreach to organizations that specialize in preventing the sexual predation and abuse of kids? Those organizations exist. Were they contacted? Were they asked to do an audit or provide feedback of this program? After it was found that Robert Kane had raped a cadet, this department and board talked to the press about how there would be top-to-bottom investigations of every youth program, and we knew nothing would come of that. We knew that. The LAPD cannot report on itself. It cannot investigate itself. And every time this board fails to challenge that, they demonstrate how they are just another arm of LAPD.
We have no other comment cards on this item.
Commissioner Goldsmith, you want to make the motion with amendment?
Yes, I'd like to have the department report back in 60 days on progress on the items that are listed as in progress in the report. Does that work?
After the first, we good with that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, we'll go to item number 2C, please.
Number 2C, Department's report dated November 21st, 2017, relative to the Ethics Enforcement Section Quarterly Report, third quarter, 2017.
Welcome. Do we have any questions of the department on this report? Anything you want to say before we
I can give a brief
hear the
summary,
public?
Commissioner, if you'd like.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Captain Tim Norquist, the Commanding Officer of Special Operations Division. During the third quarter, we had no integrity test failures. So far this year, we've only had one failure. That was during the first quarter. This gives us a year-to-date failure rate of only 2%, slightly better than our 4% failure rate of last year, but significantly better than our 5-year failure rate of 9%. In regards to complaint intake tests, we only had one failure. This is the first failure of the year, which also gives us a year-to-date failure rate of only 2%, significantly better than last year, which was 12%, and the 5-year failure rate, which is also 12%. This concludes my summary of the report.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on this item?
We have two public comment cards. We have Mr. Herman and Michael Novick.
So, in our understanding of the report, very little deficiencies in his report, as you heard. Not too much to say. You know, after all, we are the eyes, the ears, and the mouths of the public. All of us here who are great speakers, not to mention their great opinions. However, the enforcement section on quarterly reports, based on not my investigation, has deficiencies. What are these deficiencies? They're the same deficiencies that have been going on for years. Inaccurate, inappropriate, and not satisfying the ears of the public. So what the hell does the speaker mean by that? Well, let's break it down this way. You see, back on the third quarter of 2017, as brought out under BBC number 17/0449. For the record, as you see, I must stay on topic because I cannot use my critical thinking and my 42 USC 12101 way of thinking, right, Shane? So the recommendation for the bias board action with prejudice is this: that they're going to receive the department's report directly for the office of the inspector. I contacted the inspector general. I contacted every unit of department policy and procedure with not one good answer. Thank you, Javier Becerra. In addition to that, as I spoke to Mr. Kevin De Leon yesterday.
Next speaker, please.
Michael Novick, please.
Morning, Mr. Novick.
Morning. I'd like to suggest that the board direct this ethics oversight group to look at the ethics of the police commission. I understand that you claim you're not part of the LA Police Department, but right up above your head it says the Board of Police Commissioners, Los Angeles Police Department. If the police commission, as it did today, approves almost $250,000 of additional funding for the LAPD, this week it came out that the Los Angeles Public Library is paying the LAPD $5 million a year for protection and policing services. I discovered this week, I should have been aware of it sooner, that the Metro system has changed its enforcement provisions by switching a contract from the LA Sheriff's Department to a variety of police departments, including the LAPD, riding the trains, and I'm wondering what the size of that contract is. And I think it's unethical of the police commission to act as a fig leaf for the kinds of scurrilous practices that we just heard described, for the kinds of funding that goes on. Over half of the city's budget already goes into the coffers of the LAPD, on top of which there are apparently these completely unsupervised contracts for millions and millions of dollars from other public agencies going into the LAPD, and millions of dollars every week that you approve without even a second glance. So I think that your ethics are in question. I think that you're providing the complicity with the police department that allows the complacency of many people in the city to think that somehow the public is being served by you to govern their practices, when in fact you're operating as a rubber stamp and a blank check. If you write a blank check for murder, for the most murderous department in the country, if you cover up the white supremacy of this department with the shell game of different people in and out of the commission, I see your two black members are absent this week. I wonder why. And I think that the question of white supremacy is...
Okay.
We have no other cards, sir, on this item.
I'm sorry?
We have no other cards on this item.
We have a motion for approval on item number 2C, please.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item number 3, report of the chief. Chief, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. Several items to report on. We had an officer-involved shooting this past Wednesday at about 1600 hours in Van Nuys area, when uniformed gang enforcement details officers observed a vehicle with plates that were reported as lost or stolen. The vehicle, which was a Honda Civic, was occupied by a male driver, later identified as Oscar Anyea, and 2 female passengers. The officers initiated a following of the vehicle based on the reasonable suspicion that the vehicle was stolen. Anyea, who was the driver, attempted to elude the officers, and a short pursuit ensued. During the vehicle pursuit, Anyea fired at least once at the police vehicle from his point as driver of the pursued vehicle. The pursuit culminated when Anyea crashed his vehicle into a light standard and immediately exited the vehicle with a handgun, firing at the officers multiple times. Officers returned fire, killing Anyea, and who died on the sidewalk. Fire department responded, transported. We failed to respond. The female occupants inside were uninjured as a result of the shooting and the traffic violation, and no officers were injured. 2 handguns belonging to Anyea were recovered at scene. You know, obviously a very dynamic situation, and we were very, very lucky that no employees were injured by Enea's action before he was killed. Also in the news, we have begun our process of closing some of our police station front desks from the hours of 11 at night till 7 in the morning, based on an analysis of their work capability and the workload. This will allow us to deploy additional officers into the field. Eventually, there will be 16 of the desks closed. The desks that are attached to stations with jails will remain open 24/7. Eventually, this will result in about 48 officers being returned to the field. This is part of the much larger realignment plan that the department has, where several hundred officers have already been returned to the field, and we anticipate by the end of first quarter next year we'll have about 200 more returned to the field. Also, there was a report on the lack of enforcement in and around the libraries, where the department responded to that report and personal observations by me. We added some resources to enforcement efforts in and around our most problematic libraries. I did a personal inspection yesterday. The Central Library was much improved. Those results, the extra enforcement has resulted in almost 50 misdemeanor, 25 felonies, and a number of citations of people for criminal activity in and around the libraries. So very important to me that the libraries remain a place of sanctuary for families and people that are looking for the services that they provide. Also, there was a article on police fatalities that focused on Anaheim. I won't discuss the Anaheim part of that, but Los Angeles Police Department was mentioned, and the document that is the source document by which the ACLU initiated their study, or the source document that they used to provide the statistics for their summary. I reviewed that source document, and Los Angeles Police Department per capita was listed as 48 out of the top 100 cities in police fatalities per capita. Crime statistics, we are at an 8.6 reduction in homicides this year to date. That's 20 fewer homicides than last year, although we had a very difficult weekend with 6 homicides, primarily gang-related, primarily in south and central parts of the city. We show a 10% reduction in rapes, 7% increase in robberies, and a 5% increase in ag assaults. Total violent crime picture, primarily fueled by the ag assault and robbery statistics, is a 4.6% increase. Property crime about even with last year at a 1% increase. Total Part 1 crime is at a 1.9% increase. Victims shot in the city of Los Angeles are down 10.3%. That's 107 people so far this year less than were shot than last year, so that's a significant improvement. Traffic statistics, we have a 3.6% reduction in fatal traffic accidents citywide. However, we have a significant increase in pedestrian killed in motor vehicle accidents, 23% increase in those. 116 people have been killed in pedestrian versus motor vehicle accidents this year. My personnel statistics I normally report on. Excuse me while I find them.
Waukesha Wilson. Faraday. Waukesha Wilson. Faraday. Waukesha Wilson. Faraday. Waukesha Wilson.
So we got disruption of the meeting. I can't see who's speaking, but Madam, if you disrupt the meeting again, I'll ask you to leave the meeting. If you okay. Go ahead, Chief.
John Horton.
Okay, we'll ask her to leave the meeting. Sergeant. Okay. Thank you. Have a good Thanksgiving. I've asked you to leave the meeting, please. If you don't leave the meeting, we'll call a recess, and then if we come back and have to do it again, then the public portion of the meeting will be over. So you can leave, or we're going to ask everybody to leave. Up to you. You want everybody to leave? That's your last warning.
It's time to go. Come on. Time to go. This way. This way. Come on.
Okay. Thank you.
Steve,
Yeah.
do you want him to?
Yeah. Yes, please. Okay, then. No, I'm just asking you to leave, and unless you won't leave, then I will clear out the meeting. I can't hear what you're saying. You're saying you're not going to leave the meeting, then okay. You've had your warning. Okay, I'll tell you what, we'll start over again. This is your, okay, this is your warning. Okay, so let's see if she, okay, let's leave her alone and let's move on. You've had a warning. It's hard for me here because you're all facing the other direction, so it's hard to see who's disrupting the meeting, but we'll figure it out. Okay, personnel strength, Chief?
Continuing. Sworn personnel, we're at 10,010 on payroll. That is the highest number that this particular commission has ever seen. Civilian personnel, we're at 2,881. That's 468 vacancies from our ascribed TO. We have about 400 reserve officers, 285 specialists, and a total of 2,172 cadets in our program. And that concludes my report.
Okay. Questions? Anything, Chief?
We have 5 public comment cards. We have Mr. Herman, Michael Novick, Hamid Khan, the Red Chief, and Prentice Jenkins.
Paul, as you see, we're having a difficulty here of a moment. And under good neighborhood laws, tips on keeping Los Angeles livable or livable. And that is to respect the Brown Act. How many times have we noticed and feel the tension and apprehension brought by the billionaire up there who...
So you're out of,
hold on, sir.
you're off topic. This is your comments on the report of the Chief of Police. So that was your last warning on this one.
Reflects this type of warning, that we're not safe in Los Angeles. You heard how there was a shooting, involved an officer up in Van Nuys. And what's wrong with the city of Los Angeles? We're not secured. As you heard earlier by the nice gentleman who says, we become a white supremacist of police department as opposed to protect and serve the public. The same way you alleged and arrested Michael Hunt numerous times, the Red Chief. And now he has to defend himself against a racism and a prejudice, biased Steve Soboroff and Matthew Johnson, to reflect on the record. So as long as we have corruption, scare tactics, and the police department not protecting citizens, you're not social workers. Your job is not to become social workers. Your job is to deal with crime. The same way Danny Bakewell stole $3 million from the city of Compton, and I want that money returned in order to pay for the donations that I wish to contribute along with Compton to give to the police department to protect and serve.
Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Soboroff, and thank you for listening, Mr. Johnson.
And please let the record reflect Commissioner Johnson is present.
Mr. Novick?
Yeah, I think that, there are significant elements in the chief's report that you should be asking him questions about, not just relying on the public to do your job for you. He says that the police department is at the greatest strength he's ever seen, and I think you need to ask yourselves why there's a correlation between more and more police in the city of Los Angeles, including these reassignments, and more killings by police in Los Angeles. If more police means more deaths of people at the hands of the police, then you have to question why you need more and more police. He mentioned that there are over 2,000 cadets in the department, and we've demonstrated to you pretty clearly that there's inadequate supervision of the officers dealing with those cadets, and those cadets are therefore at risk. You haven't dealt with that sufficiently. He talked about the fact that there was another police killing this week. Later in your meeting, you're looking at several police killings or officer-involved shootings and one in-custody death that took place almost a year ago, December of 2016. When are you going to catch up with the rate of murders that this department is carrying out under the leadership, so-called, of Chief Beck? I've asked repeatedly for some accounting of what the relationship is of the LAPD with CBS and the broadcast of a show called SWAT. Is the department getting funding for that? What are the nature of the relationship between the department and that broadcast network in producing propaganda and airing it on a weekly basis, presenting SWAT as if it's somehow an agency that is involved in community relations, when in fact it's special weapons and tactics, and this board authorized the use of drones under the supervision of SWAT, which tells us that drones are in fact weapons of the LAPD. So I charge you all with dereliction of duty for your lack of oversight, and I demand that you fire Charlie Beck.
Hamid Khan.
Mr. Khan?
To see some new faces today. So one of the things that we always try to do every week is to raise awareness in our communities as well, who come to this body, which we call shock absorbers for the system. So they are here to absorb the shock, they are here to suck in the concern, and then to flip it around and basically tell everybody to go fuck off. That's been the modus operandi, is how they do. So now, this department, much against the community's wishes, like out of 1,100 emails, and this woman, she's the assistant chief, Beatrice Gurmila, who's sitting up front, completely lied and completely lied on our faces that, we're going to take public feedback and all of that. And then they went ahead and launched the drones. But it's been over 5 weeks. And as in their own tradition of secrecy and everything else that happens behind closed doors, there's no update on what's going to happen with these killing machines. In the paper they had announced that they're going to launch these within 30 days. 30 days have passed since October 17th. I mean, today is like almost the 5th week, but there's no update on that, right? They sit there. This man, the chief, when the drone first came in Los Angeles, he said, "I will not sacrifice public trust for a piece of police equipment." Well, who cares about public trust, right? Because the most murderous police department in the country. So I think the takeaway from all of this is that we don't come here expecting them to represent us. We don't come here expecting them to do the right thing. We don't come here to we don't come here expecting them to listen to our concerns. But what we come here is to expose them. We come here to expose this fallacy and this illusion of civilian oversight and this police commission body. So just watch as he gives his report, watch as the assistant chief sits here, watch at that woman, Shane Goldsmith, is the president of Liberty Hill Foundation. For those who may not be in the nonprofit world, that's supposedly one of the progressive foundations.
The Red Chief.
Speaker, please.
The Red Chief, followed by Prentice Jenkins.
Morning, sir.
I'm really baffled by these police officers right here. And let me tell you why. They wanted to arrest me for standing out in the hallway. I've never seen in a public building that the hallway is not open to the public. This has been going on, and they have capriciously abused their discretion in enforcing any of the Brown Act policies, which is part of the California Constitution. I'm very ashamed of you sober off right now, and I'm very ashamed of the police officers. Every time I have to file a report against Chief Beck, a complaint against Chief Beck about them and how they enforce the Brown Act, This whole building right here is entirely building is open to the public, including this hallway right here. And it says that in the report that I got from the Superior Court, and you guys keep on violating people's constitutional rights, which is a part of the statistics, because you arrested me on a 409 that was invalid, and Matt Johnson came back out and look for everybody. And this is what the whole problem is, that your right hand doesn't know what your left hand is doing. And this is what keeps you guys in trouble. This is what keeps you guys in federal court. This is what keeps the individuals like Chief Charlie Beck and Matt Johnson in trouble, because the officers are not following the law. And that's part of the statistics. You can't keep on arresting somebody from standing in your building. This hallway is open to the public. They just tried to intimidate me last week when I was here about this building and this whole thing. And they don't even understand the Constitution. None of these guys understand the Brown Act or what it represents. So if you can please do these guys together. Chief Beck, I'm really addressing you with this because they're your officers.
Prentice Jenkins.
Prentice Jenkins. Peace
Welcome,
between-
Mr. Jenkins.
Welcome. Good to see you. President Soboroff, glad you're at the helm again. Honorable President Soboroff. Honorable Vice President Johnson, I'm glad to see you. Chief, I wanted to talk to you about that issue I had in my building, about the man pulling the gun on me. And I haven't heard anything. And remember, this man, he pulled 2 guns, and the police officers let him go. Now, it's the police job to get illegal guns off the street. Had they done their job, you never know what you could have found on those guns. You could have found murders on those guns. I'm not saying he did the murders, but I'm saying had they done their job and arrested the man and taken the guns, you could have checked out the guns and found out what type of crimes were on the guns. So I'd like an update, Chief, if I could get that on how that's going. I'd appreciate that. It's good to see you too, Chief.
We'll do this.
Also, traffic. Geez. Somebody's going to get killed on 7th and Broadway, 7th and Bixel. I saw the officers out there on the beat, walking the beat. That was great to see. Everybody's on their best behavior. That's I'll give you more gold stars on that, Chief. You got your officers out there. Put more officers out there, and not just on Grand and 7th Street. Put officers down on Wall and 7th Street. Make the presence known, because once the presence is known, you know, the bad guys seem to crawl back in their holes, and there's a lot of crime going on in downtown. But you can get a hold of that, and I appreciate the officers and everything that they do. Thank you.
And we have one final speaker card on this item, Cynthia Jarrett.
Welcome.
Thank you. And this is my first time ever coming here. I was didn't even know that I could actually come and talk to you. I'm a minister and I sing. I'm a singing minister. I don't preach at any church or anything. And my minutes at the moment, I'm helping to house homeless veterans by singing on the street. What I did, thank God that the police force helped me to get my license. I got my license, and I did get a permit from the commissioner, and I have also a permit for Santa Monica. Every city that I go to, I travel up and down the coast of California, I ask for permission from the police force or the sheriff department and find out if I need some kind of permit before I do any activity. In helping to house the homeless veterans, and that's male, female, male, female, all ages, whether they're ambulatory or not. And lately I've been getting harassed, and I don't know if you can do anything about this. I'm not even sure that the officers that work for Metro, I've been getting harassed by 4 people. I'm a little emotional about it. I don't understand why they're picking on me when there's so many people out there, and I have pictures and everything, that don't even have a license to do what they're doing or any kind of permit, and they're doing things that are not okay for the city. And my whole, I don't, you know, I have nothing to do with them. I have nothing to do, I'm just out there by myself. And
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for coming.
Okay. We have no other comment cards on this item. We're in item number 4, public comment period. We have 10 cards. The first 3, Mr. Herman, Paula Miner, and Tamara Case.
Want to start the clock, please?
You see there's a lady in front of the podium, sir. I'm not as rude as you are. That's why people get upset, Mr. Soboroff, because you're rude. $1 billion developer worth shit. That's what you are. Just the way you respond, the way I'm being courteous to a woman, you'd rather have me be a sexual misconduct predator like all those cadet programs that you have no action and taking no action because the public disagrees with it. People like you, Mr. Soboroff, whose son is gay, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. But when you fuck with my mind, 42 USC 12101/38, Shane, my mental health isn't as ignorant as some of you. No passion, no heart, and no consideration, let alone no fucking attitude to respect people the way I respect a young woman, African-American woman. Most people don't respect anyone nowadays. You know why? Because of your bullshit $1 billion attitude, motherfucker. That's why. And all I try to do is come here and be polite. Instead, I get told, your time is up. Your time is on. I don't give a fuck about time. Time has no element in my life. You created my situation of homelessness since 2008 when you put me in a fucking jail cell with no cot and I slept there for 5 fucking nights and you try to scare me. You try to scare me, huh? But when that white fucking cop put those handcuffs on me and put me up against the wall and kicked me, you didn't give a fuck. So that's why I come in here fucking pissed off, because I'm not afraid of no one but myself. I'm afraid of myself. But no one fucking cares about the people in here. You don't care about the fucking public. I'm here for fucking public interest, not fucking politics and your fucked up politics. Fuck you, billionaire, and fuck you, Matthew.
Next.
Paula Miner.
Excuse me, they're saying they're not going to take my card.
We'll take it. You were on time.
I'm speaking to our concerned members of the community who have come to this commission to ask for fairness, honesty, justice, transparency, and accountability. We in Black Lives Matter have been coming to this commission for 4 years, but these concepts are not found in the actions taken in this room or in LAPD's flawed system, especially when it comes to poor people and people of color. This commission does not listen, it does not represent us, or really care about the community as it's set up to serve. This is why they prove everything that's presented to them, even when the items are glaringly false, misrepresented, and without integrity. When it comes to items like the LAPD's manipulations of data about crime, when it comes to LAPD's operation of a cadet program that allows rape, theft, and has no respect for integrity or honesty, when LAPD lies about a missing videotape in a jail cell, when LAPD distorts facts about officer-involved shootings and brutality, or when they totally ignore public comment against the drone program. This commission says, oh, that's fine. Anything they say is fine. Why? Because they're here for self-serving purposes, not to serve us. We need to remember that. Who is this commission? A rich white man who allows his cronies to get big money police contracts with no bid process. A rich black entertainment lawyer and political donor who is tied to the mayor's coattails. And 3 women, black, brown, and lesbian, who hope to advance their professional careers by paying homage to their puppeteers, Garcetti and LAPD. So we in the community must continue to show up here to be sure that this political travesty does not occur with no one watching. We must also increase our efforts to attack this cancerous commission from other vantage points and other strategies. Remember, what happens in this room is wrong, and we cannot.
Thanks for your comments.
Tamara Case.
I'm sharing a few comments that Tamara would have shared with you had she not been forcibly removed. Tamara was really triggered by the police chief's report about a new police shooting, just as though this is business as usual and so normal that we shouldn't really notice its inclusion in his report. Tamara wants this commission and all of the public to remember that the ancestors are hearing about this, and the ancestors have a voice as well, and that there will be hell to pay. And to also acknowledge that we are standing on Tongva land that was not willingly given to us, and that we need to always acknowledge that fact. Thank you.
Prentice Jenkins, followed by Adam Smith.
Prentice Jenkins, Peace Between Residents and Police. I want to let the commission know that I'll continue to speak out against the murderers of Ezell Ford, Wampler, and Villegas. I'll keep my foot on the gas on that. That's that 1% of the police officers that are just crazy and killing people for no reason whatsoever. And speak out for Waukesha Wilson. For the 99% of the police officers who are doing their job, I want to say you will always have my support, and I want you to stand your post no matter how bad things get. If you have someone shooting at you, shoot back. Don't back down. Whatever you do, you'll always have my support. For the rank and file officers, you'll always have my support, Chief. As long as they continue to do their job, guess what? This city will stay safe. There's a lot of bad people out there. I don't know. I grew up with a bunch of them. And they're very, very bad people. And those are the people that you yell for the police department. You yell for the police for. Where are the police at? So stand your ground and don't back down no matter what for the 99% of the good officers out there. Chief, also, that traffic's getting crazy for pedestrians. You gotta get some traffic officers out there on 7th and Broadway, 7th and Bixel. You know, we're weaving in between cars. They're blocking they're blocking the intersection, 7th and Bixel, 7th and Broadway. You know, I mean, it's terrible for pedestrians out there. Somebody's going to get killed. Get some officers out there with video so they can't say they didn't do it.
Thank you, sir.
Adam Smith, followed by Tiffany Guerra and Jamie Garcia.
Mr. Smith.
As y'all sit down this week with your closest friends and family and break bread over a meal that whitewashes genocide, I hope you truly reflect on your responsibility that you all have in this room. I hope you take a moment to really think about the effect that this commission brings to the tables of other families across our city. I hope you think about Ezell Ford's mother, Zelalem Anuatu's uncle, Jesse Romero's little brother, his parents, and that list, as we all know, goes on and on and on and on. Chief Beck, while I can't speak for anyone else here that comes here, and I know you don't, surely care what I say, when I come here and repeat the demand from Black Lives Matter that you should be fired, or when I call Mayor Garcetti's office every day and demand that he fire you, I don't think it's due to some like overwhelming hatred of you as a person. But what you represent is an institution that upholds a system of white supremacy, and I abhor white supremacy. Not only do you represent this institution, you defend it at every turn, and this does reflect on your character. It is widely known that LAPD leads all police forces across the country in the killing of its residents. In 2015, after this commission found Officer Wampler acted out of policy in the murder of Azelle Ford, Chief Beck made his video to make sure that his troops knew that he supported their every move. All of you here purport to hold public trust up as some continuing goal for which to strive, yet you make no effort to attain it. When Chief Beck said in that video that LAPD do their job to a standard that is absolutely unequaled in our profession, that is why you need to be fired. Because that LAPD standard that you hold in such high regard is continuing to kill members of this community with impunity, and it has to stop.
Tiffany Guerra, followed by Jamie Garcia and the Red Chief.
So the last time we were here, we heard Charlie Beck defend a body cam video of an officer planting drugs in a person's wallet. This was one more confirmation of what we already knew, that body cameras are not for LA residents and they are not for accountability. They are instead just one more tool for police to use to capture video footage. And even when outreach is conducted by this department to get public feedback about tools of surveillance like drones and like body cameras, it's done in the most false, constricting way, for example, with the body camera outreach. For people who felt that no video release policy was sufficient, there was nowhere to put that on the survey. So folks had to choose between filling out a survey and being forced to pick a release window for a policy they didn't agree with, or just not filling out the survey and not having any response recorded. And that wasn't an accident. Whoever designed that survey would have made that choice. Then with the drone outreach, same thing. We saw how there was a request for feedback, but responses were only considered legitimate if they were worded in a unique way. And things like postcards. We had hundreds of postcards that were delivered to this office, but were considered not legitimate by Gurmala here because they weren't postmarked, even though they were written and filled out by folks who live in neighborhoods that are most impacted by police occupation and by people who frankly have no interest in coming here or in sending an email to LAPD or in even writing their name, but they wanted to fill out a postcard to let you know how they felt. But that was disregarded because it didn't match with the kind of feedback LAPD was looking for. With the bias policing survey, LAPD took a survey of 2,000 people, then decided that folks of color who expressed mistrust of police only answered in a certain way, in that way because of the political climate, not based on decades and even centuries of policing of their neighborhoods and bodies. That was actually written into the report by Dr. Craig Uchida, who runs Justice and Security Strategies and who has been working with LAPD for the last 9 years to implement predictive policing. So you have a person whose company makes money off LAPD.
Next speaker, please.
Jamie Garcia.
Next speaker, please. Did you call the next speaker?
Jamie Garcia,
Jamie
followed
Garcia,
by the Red
please.
Chief.
So, okay.
Chief Beck talked about, well, I want to start with all the partnerships that are happening with LAPD in our communities. Not only do we hear about the partnerships in libraries and public services, they're partnering with universities and they're also partnering with corporations. So why does that matter to us? I can start over too, that's fine.
Yeah, you want to start over? Go ahead.
Sure. So I wanted to build on what Mama Paula was saying about looking at this as a call to action for us as community members. We have to not only come here and voice our concerns, but we also have to keep track of what's going on. What is LAPD doing? Because we can't depend on them. Because we had Shane Goldsmith, who's sitting right there, on record telling us that she didn't understand what the record management system was. But she voted on a grant that developed the record management system, another $40,000. But she told us, I had no idea what it does. We know what it does. I'm a registered nurse, and I've been studying and been monitoring and been watching LAPD, and I know what it does. So this is a call to action for us that we need to be monitoring them. We need to be understanding these systems. They're partnering with public services, they're partnering with universities, and they're partnering with private corporations. So when we talk about libraries and the money that's going to LAPD to protect libraries now, why isn't that going towards homeless services? Why isn't that going to drug rehab centers? I have a friend who chooses not to call the police as a librarian because she doesn't want people just to be arrested because this is their only refuge, their only place to go when they don't have a place to sleep, when they don't have a privacy of their own home. So let's think about that. That's how they're infiltrating our spaces again. So when we think about the universities that they're infiltrating, like Tiffany Guerra was saying, they partnered with UCLA to develop predictive policing. What is hotspot policing? How is that impacting our communities? How is it impacting black and brown communities? They're also partnering with UCLA to develop more mapping of misdemeanors in the community. That was in February of this year, where they partnered with UCLA to map misdemeanors and then provide social services to those areas that are hot spots. They're not talking about that. They probably don't even know it fucking exists because they don't know what's going on. So again, we need to be here. We need to be monitoring. We need to be doing the research, and we need to be throwing it in their faces that we know exactly what is going on. And then now they're partnering with corporations, Coban Technologies, to develop facial recognition on dash cams to be able to identify us, to be able to identify our movement.
Okay, next speaker, please.
The red chief, please.
Next speaker. Next speaker, please. Can we have the next speaker, please? So you're disrupting the meeting now? Is there a final warning for disrupting the meeting? Mr. Hunt?
Good morning. The Red Chief Hunt for the record. I'm the oldest gadfly here. I've been here since 2004. Tiki, I'm very disappointed in you. We come a long ways, and we got off the federal consent decree in 2003 with John Mackey and them, and we don't have that kind of representation here right now because everybody's in it for special interests. It was a difference when Chief Beck came out of Viragosa's apartment and said that there wasn't going to be no more fucked up policing and there wasn't going to be no more misdemeanors. And he reported over to the city council and said that same thing on record when he first came out of Viragosa's house. Now special interests came in and bought him out. He's not his own man no more, and this is why you have everything that's going on. If you look at the video when he came out of Viragosa's house, when I've been arrested 86 times for selling soap and not bullshit, and you promised me that wasn't going to happen when you first took office, and you reneged on your promise as soon as Garcetti came in. I don't know what the fuck is going on here, but Tiki, I'm very disappointed in you. We come back to our old ways. And this is why I'm asking for everybody to go back on the federal consent decree, because you guys actually need it. You guys needed to be monitored by the federal consent decree and the Christopher Commissioner, because you guys have gone back to your old ways. This guy right here needs to be fired from here. He knows nothing about the Brown Act. I'm asking Rena to take him out of here. It's a lot going on that's very wrong, and these people are up here telling you guys this injustice going on, and you guys keep on saying, no, it's not. They wouldn't be here if it wasn't going on, you know, and you guys are not listening to the people. You guys are listening to your pocketbooks and special interests. Chief Beck, I'm really disappointed in you. When you first came over to City Hall, I was the first one to shake your hand and congratulate you, but you left your policy and you left your principles. The AC.
Next speaker, please.
The next card says Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. There's no name. Is there someone who filled out this card?
Let's go to the next one.
Okay. No, it just says, I believe it's yours, though. It looks like you're writing.
my biometrics are all over the place. I think we just gotta keep on doing what we are doing, because I really appreciate Paula setting the tone for us to have our own sort of community town hall, if you will, and using this space as well. Paula talked about who these people are. I mean, just to re-identify them, because Paula ran out of time. This man over there, Matt Johnson, is an entertainment lawyer. He used to be the president of the commission. Now he's the vice president. That man over there, Steve Soboroff, he's a land developer. I mean, he's a big-time land developer. He was the vice president, and now he's the president again. But he used to be the president of the police commission. The woman next to him is, that's Shane Goldsmith. She's the president of Liberty Hill Foundation, a foundation who really touts itself and positions itself as a social change organization. But this is the status of the president of that foundation, who rubber stamps everything, who has no idea, zero idea of what is going in front of her. A foundation that pushes people for advocacy, a foundation that prides itself. And yes, I mean, the foundation itself has some really good principles, but it's really the person who's leading this foundation. And to give you one example, that over thousands of people, as per Shane Goldsmith's own Liberty Hill guidelines, that engage in advocacy, build power, build leadership in the community, go out and organize, raise awareness in the community. The fight is lifting the bottom up. The fight is at the bottom. The fight is on the grassroots. The drone was a grassroots fight. This was truly a grassroots fight where people petitioned, people had town halls, people engaged in advocacy, people responded, people came here, took the time. I mean, you name it. And what does she do? She is a part of the policy making, and when the vote came in, she was absent. But she was a member of the subcommittee.
Next speaker, please.
Jesse Wexler.
Jesse, the next speaker. Thank you. Morning, sir.
I wasn't expecting to be here at another meeting to get to go to, and that had to close up early. I just came to bring up our SO40 once again. We don't have too much time. I believe that Chief Beck is looking to close this down and get it quickly arranged. We have to take care of the people here that live here. They may not be already fully American, but they are very much working for this community, and I implore you. I wonder what it is that we're doing here. Could I get your attention? Is that okay? I don't want to speak out as I'm not supposed to, but I wonder sometimes, this is only the second time I've been here, and I wonder what it is that the commission is really doing. I don't know how much you are putting into what we need for the community. I don't know what it is that takes place fully with what is going on for each part of what we're doing, how much we're working for the purpose of protecting, I guess, and there's protection on both sides of what we're doing. If we just do this in a more peaceful manner, I think that instead of pulling people out and locking them up, just the whole process, I only know part of what is involved. I just know that it is dangerous in the way it is happening right now. And SO40 changes into a new method, I think is going to be less than what we are seeking to do for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker, Amara Abdullah, followed by Melina Abdullah.
Welcome.
So we're going to switch orders because I want her to be able to speak last. So every week we come here and we're supposed to be engaging in civic participation. This is supposed to be the body that we come to share our concerns about policing. This is supposed to be the body that I teach my students and I teach my children that if they have concerns, they're supposed to be able to engage with their governmental bodies. What we see, I asked Amara to observe these folks during the meeting. And what we see is they care less about what the community is saying. They could care less about you coming up here and talking about, you know, the issues that are of serious concern to us. We took time out of our day. It's not like we don't have anything better to do than to be here. But the body that was appointed, Shane, the body that was appointed to listen to what we're saying and represent us doesn't care what it is we have to say. So I don't even have to tell that to my children. She's here and she observed it for herself, right? She's observing for herself what it feels like to be surrounded by police, what it feels like to be intimidated walking through metal detectors and having officers demand that they put visitor stickers on their bodies in order to come in. She witnessed this for herself. So if you want people to have a better relationship with the police, which I don't think that they should because we know what policing was designed to do, right? Then you need to change, but you're unwilling to change, and that's why we have to continue to demand that not only do we do non-reformist reform, like getting rid of the police chief who leads the most murderous police force, the most corrupt police force in the entire nation, not only must we demand that they fire you, Charlie Beck, but we also need to demand that they dismantle the system that puts a target on our backs. And so
thank you.
I want her to speak of her experiences, Amara, and tell them what grade you're into.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm in 6th grade, and I have a song that I wrote, and yeah. Yeah, it's a Christmas song. Jingle bells, Chief Beck smells, he should leave LA. That guy lets people die, cops kill us every day.
Thank you.
Can we all help her sing this? Yeah. Her time's not up, so.
No, her time's not up, but your time is up.
Jingle bells, Chief Beck smells, he should leave LA.
Okay, let's do, yeah. Let's go to, are there any other?
There are no other comment cards on this item, sir. We're on closed session items.
Let's go out of order now and do the, let's do the consent agenda items now. Mr. Herman's left. Are there any other speakers?
We have one speaker on 1G. Mr. Herman had a card for everything else.
Okay, so let's have a motion for approval of all of those items.
I believe you spoke already, ma'am.
You can't speak for someone else. So let's have a motion for approval on all the items except for item G. No, I am not. No. You did speak.
I move items 1A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I.
Not G.
Not G.
Yeah. H.
K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, and S.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, do we have a comment?
We're on item number 1G.
Okay, item 1G. Do you have a speaker on 1G?
We have Tiffany Guerra.
Tiffany Guerra. You're not, you don't have a speaker card. You spoke already? You spoke on someone else. So this is your last warning. You can either sit down or leave the meeting. It's your choice. Okay, so we'll ask you to leave the meeting. Thank you. Let's have the speaker on item number 1G.
Tiffany Guerra, please.
Stephanie, are you going to speak or no? Thank you.
Tiffany Guerra, please.
Tiffany Guerra. Tiffany, are you going to speak, or we'll just move ahead on 1G?
This is relative to a monetary donation in the amount of $300.
Okay, so you're out of order. If you continue on singing your song, we're going to ask everyone to leave. Last warning, Professor Abdullah. This is on item number 1G.
G.
And I just want to raise that there's still been no investigation or discussion about how the LAPD and the complaint system protects officers who have abused minors. Some things remain unclear. When an officer has a complaint for sexual misconduct, assault, domestic violence, or assault of a minor sustained, how long does that complaint remain on their record? We know that with the police department in Baton Rouge, for example, officers can have sustained incidents of sexual misconduct removed from the record after 5 years. And we also know that with the LAPD, the last time an audit was done by the Inspector General in 1997, in over 75% of cases of domestic violence that were sustained against officers, the performance evaluations of officers did not reflect the misconduct or were dramatically minimized what occurred. So this is something we still don't know today for all their examinations and recommendations about the cadet program. We still don't know when a complaint against an officer is sustained, how long does it stay on the record? And I'm asking because that's something that you would know and would have looked into if you cared about reducing harm. For officers that have been fired or who have resigned in lieu of penalty after having a complaint sustained against them, how does the LAPD make sure that person is not going to continue to harm others or get hired by another agency? If you are truly concerned about the safety of the public. And I'll give an example. That is of Officer Jeffrey Sandwell. Officer Sandwell was arrested for the forcible rape of a 17-year-old girl he knew in his neighborhood. Sandwell was part of the Neighborhood Watch program, whereby his home was proclaimed a safe haven. Sandwell was held for 5 days, and when additional women came forward with claims of assault, Sandwell was released after the DA decided not to press charges. Sandwell left the LAPD within 4 years to start a career at Trilogy Financial, where he is today, and where his bio speaks today of a successful career with the LA Police Department as a police officer, and of his awards and numerous commendations from his superiors as well as the FBI. So there's an example of a known rapist who is still out there in the community and who uses his history with
We have a motion for approval for item number 1G, please.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Let's go on to item 5, please.
Item number 5, we have one comment card. We have Mr. Michael Novick, 5A1.
And are there any on?
We have one card for Mr. Herman on all items, but he's not present.
Okay, so there's no on 5A2?
No.
On
just
5B?
5A1.
I'm sorry. On
5A1, Mr. Novick.
Okay. Is that the only comment on 5A1?
That's the only one for closed sessions.
Okay. Mr. Novick?
So they don't operate according to their rules.
Here you have this closed session of public employee discipline, dismissal, release. You have, I think, I can't tell if it's 9 or 10 officers. I don't know what police officer 3+1 means. Sounds like somebody bring a date to a dinner party. But every week you have 9 or 10, 7 or 10 officers being looked at for officer-involved shootings. You have here what's called an in-custody death reclass. I assume that means they shot somebody to death in custody. So your solution somehow is looking at individual officers. It's not the problem of individual officers. It's a systemic problem. You talk about constitutional policing, but the Constitution was designed to enforce a system of white and male supremacy, to legalize and legitimize land theft and genocide, to authorize slave owners to have additional representation by the number of slaves that they held, or at least 3/5 of the slaves they held. And so constitutional policing is not the solution. Looking at individual officers is not the solution. You have to look at something systemic. You have to be keeping track of the gender of the people you killed. At one point, one of the consent decrees that you had was about what kind of traffic stops and keeping track of the race of the people that you stopped. The killings that take place at the tip of the iceberg of police stops and other police operations is not a problem of the misconduct of individual officers. It's a problem of the conduct of policing and the way it's supervised by a man like Charlie Beck, who has supervised this department into becoming the most murderous in the country. I've been watching the LAPD since I moved here in '82, and for many years they shot about 50 people a year and killed about a dozen people a year, one a month. They're up almost to double that now. For the last 3 or 4 years, they've killing 21, 22, 24 people a year. And you're sitting here washing your hands of it, but you can't wash the blood of.
There are no other comment cards, sir. The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item number 5A, 1, 2, and 5B.
We're good?
The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are back in open session. In closed session, item number 5A1 was discussed and the chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. In closed session, item number 5A2 was discussed and the chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. And in closed session, item number 5B was discussed. Mr. President, is there a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.